microphone so that everybody can kind of hear me. Happy holidays, everybody. And thank you, Tina, for that very kind introduction. And I also want to thank Phil Weimeyer, a.k.a. Wiggy, for helping making this day happen. You know, it's kind of serendipitous how we ended up speaking to you today. So let me let you know how it kind of came about. On the Labor Day weekend of every year, I have a standing golf invitation with a very good friend of mine. He's a lifelong friend of mine, to play at the Pine Valley Country Club. On the Friday before Labor Day in 2017, that would have been September the 1st, I played Pine Valley with my friend, and he showed me the guest list of all those people that were playing. And one of the names on the list was a gentleman by the name of Will Weimeyer. I recognized the last name instantly, and I asked my host to introduce me to him. It turns out it was Bill's son. And I also mentioned to Will that I had caddied in his father's group on Saturday and Sunday mornings back in the 70s, and asked Will that he pass along my business card to his father because I had such great memories of being in that foursome. A few days later, Bill, or Wiggy, reached out via email, and we renewed a friendship that was lost for 41 years. A friendship between a member and a former caddy, a member who had a huge impact on my life, and I wanted to reconnect with Wig to thank him. The title of these remarks is The 10 Rules of the Caddy Yard. So you could say that's lesson number 1 in what the caddy yard taught me. That is, sometimes the caddies do actually become part of the group. And that's something I felt with Wig's group, that consisted of Bucky Hyman, that was Big Bill's son, Jack Gower, Walter Cantley, Wiggy, and when Mr. Gower and Mr. Cantley couldn't make the group, Merle Ambler would join. And I have to tell you, those guys, they were a lot of fun to be around. For those caddies in the audience, yes, I was one of you. I started caddying at Huntington Valley in the summer of 1967, 51 years ago. Now for me, caddying was both a practical and an economic necessity, because during this time, my father was sometimes in and out of work. There were 7 of us in the family, and my mother said that we had to do something to earn our keep. So I caddied at Huntington Valley for 11 years. And my final loop was on Monday, July 4th, 1977. Jack Conley knows that. That was 41 years ago, and I distinctly remember that day. I can still remember who that final loop was with. It was with Mr. and Mrs. Given. Mrs. Given, or Jane, was an artist, and one of the sincerely nicest people that I have ever met. Now, she wasn't much of a golfer, but she was a fantastic person. And I'm going to tell you more about that final loop later. The next day, Tuesday, July 5th, 1977, when I woke up that morning, instead of heading out to the golf course as I usually did, I started my first job after college at Arthur Young & Company. At the time, it was one of the big 8 accounting firms. Now, you might wonder how I got to Arthur Young. Well, there was another member of the club named Dave Carney, who I also used to caddy for. However, well before I met Dave, when I was a sophomore in high school, Wiggy and I were walking down one of the fairways, and he asked me if I was going to go to college. And I said, probably not, that I wanted to be a professional golf caddy. Wiggy immediately said, no, you don't want to do that. You need to go to college, and you should major in accounting. That had such an effect on me that the following Monday, I called Abington High School to speak to a guidance counselor to start taking college-level courses. Now, believe me, at the time, I was taking any course I could just to get out of high school. I was taking Boy Chef 1, 2, 3, and 4, home economics for boys, let me tell you. I was just trying to get out of school. So the guidance counselor looks at me and he says, I think you're a little late. But he enrolled me in some college prep courses anyway. I guess I was supposed to be one of those students that made the valedictorian possible. That's rule number 2 of the caddy yard. Take the advice of the members. There are many interested people like Wig and Mr. Carney willing to provide advice and support. And it's very important that you be open to it and not to look at it as criticism. This advice can be very powerful and valuable, both personally and monetarily, as I realized later in my life. Now, let me take a little bit of a detour and tell you how I ended up attending Villanova. As I said, in my junior year of high school, I started taking some college-level courses. And one of the courses I took was in creative writing, taught by a gentleman named Mr. Richard Lavelle. Mr. Lavelle took an interest in me, and when I applied to colleges a year later, he wrote me a very, very enthusiastic recommendation for me to attend Villanova. Anyway, because I didn't have the necessary grades to get into a school like Villanova, I had to go in for an interview. My interview was with an Augustinian priest named Father Van Fletteren. Father Van Fletteren allowed me into the school under the condition that I take his religion or philosophy classes my freshman and sophomore years so he could keep an eye on me. He didn't think I was going to make it. I later found out that he and Mr. Lavelle were classmates at Villanova. Now how's that for a coincidence? And that's how I got into the school. There's no way that would happen today. Anyway, I ended up graduating from Villanova, and while I'm in high school and college, I also start caddying in the group of Dave Carney, Bill Miller, and Jack Chrysler. I didn't know any of these guys were accountants. Anyway, one day Mr. Carney asked me if I'm going to college, and I tell him yes. He says, where are you going and what are you majoring in? I tell him I'm going to Villanova, and one of the members told me that I should study accounting. Dave said, great advice. He went on to explain that everyone in his group was an accountant, and if I got good grades, he would get me an interview at his firm. After that, nothing was said about it because I didn't want to be so bold as to ask Mr. Carney for a job. However, Dave kept a mental note in his mind, and in the fall of 1976, he said that I must now be a senior, and he asked what my grades were like. I told him my grades were borderline. He said my grades were borderline, but he got me the interview anyway, and he got me my first job out of college. So Mr. Carney gave me my start. If I can get this page turned here, I'll continue on. A couple years after I started at Arthur Young, I asked Dave why he went out of his way to get me a job at his BA accounting firm. And without hesitation, he said that he believed in me because when I caddied in his group, he said he always played well because I was able to be helpful and to give him good advice. Which for you caddies out there is rule number 3 of the caddy art. Have a good attitude, be helpful, and when asked, give good advice because you never know who's paying attention and who's going to believe in you. I would say that for at least 8 of my 11 years in Huntington Valley, I did 2 loops every day I could, barring rain, of course, and except Mondays when the club was closed. On Monday mornings, we got the chance to play. I would say that over those years, I caddied for over 9,000 people. A lot of times when I was caddying, I thought to myself, just look at how many people that I'm meeting. The vast majority of the members and the guests were very, very nice. You pick up a lot of useful skills caddying, believe it or not. You have to be able to read people and develop your intuitive skills. You see people in different moods. You know when to pick up when it's okay to talk, and when it's better just to keep your mouth shut. This leads me to rule 4 of the caddy art. In your life beyond caddying, you're going to meet a lot of people. I know in my career in public accounting and at Super of America, I have met thousands of people over the years. Think about them, and think about how you want to be remembered by them. Think about the impact that you're having on them. Rule number 5 of the caddy art was that in order to get noticed as a new caddy, and then once you were established, you were expected to set an example for the new and younger caddies that were coming up. So you did whatever was asked. For example, you picked up the driving range, you bought up the carts, you cleaned around the driveway and clubhouse and the pro shop, you parked cars for weddings and big social events like New Year's Eve. To this day, I can distinctly remember Jack Conley, the head pro, picking up paper, twigs, or whatever it was. And that set a great example to see the head pro doing things like that. It instills pride in the area you work. Even to this day, if I'm walking in our parking lot or through the halls, or using the stairs at our new headquarters building in Camden, New Jersey, if I see a bottle, a soda can, or a piece of paper, whatever it is, I pick it up. Another life lesson I learned in the caddy art was that you had to get along with everybody. That's rule number 6. Now, you don't have to like everybody, but you had to get along with everyone. Back in the day, we had a few older caddies, and how can I say this politely? They were drunks. Some of them, let me tell you, some of them would really get out of hand when they were drunk or hungover. A lot of times, these guys would be sleeping off their hangovers in the caddy shack. Late in the day, they would wake up as you were coming in for the last loop of the day, and they had no money, so they could go out that night to get their alcohol fix. Some of the arguments that we had just to get out of the caddy yard, they were really something. And there were a couple of guys you just really wanted to avoid. Needless to say, when we ran into them and we were going home, we never walked down Country Club Drive. That's why some of the members in the audience always say us walking down the first fairway because we had to escape. Rule number 7 of the caddy yard was that you had to get up early if you wanted to get your 2 loops in. You had to be out by 8:30 so that you can get back in time in the afternoon by 1 to 1:30 for the afternoon crowd. If you miss that window, you might not be able to get your 2 loops in and make the money you wanted to make. Remember, as I said earlier, in order to get out, you had to do something that helped the club. To this day, I get up at 5 a.m. every morning and I'm at my desk by 6:30. It's helped me tremendously in my business career because it helps me to set up my day and to think about the major things I want to accomplish that day. It helps me to create discipline for myself, and it taught me to be dependable and always on time. Rule 8 that the Caddie Yard taught me was that being a caddy really meant I was, to a certain extent, in the hospitality business. I remember talking to one of the old-time caddies at Huntington Valley, Tom Walsh. The old-timers from Huntington Valley in the audience will remember him as Tom Pipe, because he smoked a pipe. But one day, Tom announces that we caddies have to prove our value to the members because the members don't have to take a caddy. The members have the option of taking carts. If we're not adding value to their golf experience, we can be replaced, Tom said. That's something that really stuck with me. And even today, I tell our retailers, their salespeople, their service staff, that we're not just in the car business, we're in the hospitality business. As caddies, you must make sure you understand this concept and make sure the members and guests in your group have a nice time, even if they don't play well. It's something that will stay with you your entire life, which leads me to rule number 9 of the Caddie Yard. Remember, as caddies, you are ambassadors and representatives of your club. Make sure that as an ambassador, your members and guests leave by remembering what a good time they had and how you contributed to it. This will help you later in life as you realize that you will become an ambassador for your company, your own business, or even your own club. How do you want people to remember you and your company? Are you the type of person someone would want to do business with or play golf with? As my very good friend Sonny Hill likes to say, life is about relationships. What kind of relationship are you trying to develop? Remember, you're going to have different relationships with different people that you caddy for, and later in life, this is going to mirror the different relationships you're going to have in your business and personal life. Like at your club, you're going to have deeper and more personal relationships with certain members, and it's going to be the same in your post-caddy life. Lastly, Rule 10 of the Caddie Yard is a kind of catch-all to the previous 9. Rule 10 is to make sure you provide a good perception of yourself. Always make sure you're dressed appropriately with your hair combed. I've been in the business world a long time now, in one of the most competitive industries there is, and what I've learned is just like in our business, product battles are won on customers' perceptions. Remember, you're like a product, and people's perceptions matter. Let me tell you another story that exemplifies this point. My very first day at Arthur Young, I arrived promptly at the office at 8:30 as I was supposed to. Now, since I was a poor kid from Willow Grove, I didn't know how to dress. So anyway, I show up in a brown suit, brown shirt, brown tie, and brown platform shoes. Yes, the 70s, Tina. I thought I looked pretty spiffy. Later that morning, Mr. Carney saw me and called me into his office. I thought he was going to call me in to talk about golf. Instead, he tells me never to come into the office dressed like that again. He then hands me a copy of the book, Dress for Success, which I still have. And he tells me at lunchtime to go across the street to Brunch Brothers and to get a gray suit, a blue pinstripe, or a gray pinstripe suit with white and or blue shirts. He told me to see a salesperson. Mr. Carney even fronted me the money and let me pay him back over the next year. To this day, I will still only wear variations of blue and gray suits. Perceptions matter, believe me. That's why I got this gray suit on here. Yes, my formative years were spent caddying and growing up at Huntington Valley Country Club. It was an experience I enjoyed and reflect upon periodically. We saw many interesting times in the late 60s and through the mid-70s together. Robert Kennedy's assassination, the 1968 Democratic National Convention, the 1969 moon landing, Charles Manson and Helter Skelter, the Vietnam War, wage and price controls, the opening of China, Nixon's resignation. I could go on. And I heard a lot of the members talk about these events as we walked the golf course together. The truth is, I learned a lot about life and about myself caddying. I enjoyed all the members and those in the audience I had the privilege to caddy for, like Wiggy, Mr. Brewer, Dave Junkin, the late Bucky and Tommy Hyman, our pro and my good friend to this day, Jack Conley. And of course, a big thank you to Dave Carney, who took a big chance on me and gave me my start. Remember to thank and to be grateful to the people in your life. You know, saying thank you and being grateful are two different things. Saying thank you is just part of being mannerly, while being grateful is the secret to a life of happiness and success. Make sure you tell those in your life that helped you how grateful you are to them for making such a difference in your life, which is why I wanted to reconnect with Wig. I'm immensely grateful that I was a caddy at Huntington Valley Country Club, and I'm immensely grateful to Wig's advice and to Dave Carney for giving me my shot. It's also important to have someone in your life that you can really talk to, like a parent, a teacher, coach, or potentially a member of your club that can help you make the important decisions in your life. Lastly, what I've learned is that you never know it all. Be willing to reach out and to ask for advice at all times in your life. The great legendary coach of UCLA basketball, John Wooden, said, "It's what you learn after you know it all that makes all the difference." You know, somebody asked me once if I had to do my life in my early years all over again, would I do it? I tell people this all the time. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again. And being that we're in the Christmas season, it's been a wonderful life. Being a caddy taught me a lot about life, the importance of relationships and hospitality, doing whatever it takes, becoming mentally tough. And to close this talk with how I started, by talking about my last loop with Mr. and Mrs. Given. That last loop was by design. I always enjoyed Mr. and Mrs. Given, particularly Mrs. Given. She gave me a lot of advice when I was growing up. On that last loop, as we were coming up the valley, which was our caddy code for the 18th hole, she gave me a card in which she quoted from Charles Dickens from his autobiographical novel, David Copperfield. The quote read, "The most important thing in life is to stop saying I wish and to start saying I will. Consider nothing impossible, then treat possibilities as probabilities." What a way to be sent off to my second job and my new career. Thank you all very much for listening to my caddy stories. I certainly hope your memories of caddying are as good as mine. And for the members in the clubs in the audience, thank you for setting such a good example to your caddies and for contributing to their education. I am sure your caddies are immensely grateful. Happy holidays, everyone, and thank you.